Hey everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and tonight I just got back from watching Argylle, the newest Mathew Vaughn movie, and you walk into a movie like this and you kind of expect it to be a lot like your Kingsman and your Kick-Ass, kind of a dark comedy, that's definitely very stylistic, but also maybe you got a couple of issues with, but is this gonna be one of his hits or one of the ones that people are kind of iffy on? And right now it's definitely looking like this one's gonna be more iffy for audiences, but we'll see how this all plays out. And me personally, I'm kind of conflicted on this one, to be honest with you. On one hand, this has everything that I do like about these movies. It does have some of those great comedic beats. It's got the choreography and the fighting and the it's got like the music that's playing and it's all catchy and you're kind of in the moment. And on the other hand, it feels like it's a bit too long at times. It feels like half the things that they try to throw at you as twists, you kind of saw coming a mile away, and they don't hit as hard as it feels like they should. Some of it feels pretty obvious, like you can almost like feel the beats coming, like, okay, they're setting this up, this is obviously going to happen, and sure enough, it happens, which is kind of a shame, because I feel like in a lot of these Mathew Vaughn movies, they do end up finding ways to have like truly shocking twist moments, which this one does have a couple of those, but like I said, other ones just, you see them coming a mile away, and like it just happens exactly the way you thought it was going to happen. So I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I couldn't help but feel like that knocked a couple points off of the movie for me. But overall, I did enjoy the movie. It is a fun time. It's got the comedic beats. I think the two main leads, they really work with it. I think you're gonna have a fun time with this one, but it's definitely not as solid as the first Kingsman or the first Kick-Ass or any of those movies. I do think that this definitely, it feels more like a sequel to either of those than than on par with the first entries. But yeah, let's just break into like what the plot actually is here. So if you've seen the trailer, okay, so this woman's an author and she's writing spy novels, and then somehow in the real world her spy novels are coming true, like things that she's writing about really happened. And so that's kind of your central mystery as to like, okay, but how is this happening, what's going on? And I do think that this is kind of one of the things that once you think about it for a little bit, and once they kind of lay down the groundwork of like, oh, these people are looking for you, there really was this, there really was that, like a little bit things that okay, so she's either a psychic or she somehow knows this information, and really from there you can kind of tell exactly where this is going. And again, this is like the major twist, and you're like, no, I mean, I guessed that about maybe 20 minutes in. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw a spoiler alert out there, because this is kind of one of the things that the movie hinges on, as to like, well, how is this happening? So spoiler alert, it does turn out that she is the main character that she's been writing about, because hey, on one of her missions her memory got wiped, and now she's been told that she has this whole other life as a normal person who's writing these spy stories. But yep, they are just her adventures, and it all really happened, for the most part. I will say they added it's not entirely just Jason Bourne type stuff. They did add a little bit of a twist, because she sees the fictional version of herself, or I guess like the person that she kind of personified as the agent who was going on her adventures, this Agent Argylle. So there is no real Agent Argylle. Like, the movie pretty solidly establishes that it was always just her as a secret agent. And the Henry Cavill that you see in the trailers, that's just the imaginary version. And so as the movie's going on and action scenes are happening, you'll see her kind of switching from the real world as to like, fights are happening, to suddenly it's Henry Cavill doing the action scene. And so they kind of mess around with that for a little bit, and then they kind of show like, oh, it's Is it just stress, or is it her memories kind of coming back? And so she's kind of imagining Henry Cavill there, even though, again, Henry Cavill never existed. The version of this Agent Argylle Henry Cavill book character was not a character. They make that very clear, and the reason I'm going to go over that is because it gets really confusing at the end, but we'll get there. And then pretty much from there, it's very much like a Kingsman thing, you know, where like there's double crossings, but then that double cross was actually a fake out. And so, you know, what seemed like, oh man, she betrayed everyone, or he betrayed everyone, and then it turned out to not be the case. And, you know, it kind of plays out like a spy movie. So it's got all those great trappings to it. Along with, you know, some good reveals, other reveals where you're like, yeah, I kind of figured that was going to happen. Another one was, so they write in this character who, like, okay, this, one of their teammates had been gunned down. And so she, you know, of course, like everything else, she's writing this down in the book. And so she gets a mysterious fan email with a suggestion about how that character could be alive. And she's like, oh, you know, she brings it up a couple times, like, yeah, I was gonna bring the character back because this mysterious email just told me how it could happen, how she could still be alive. And I'm like, okay, so she's gonna be alive at the end, and she's gonna show up, and yeah, and then sure enough, there she is. She's alive at the end. She showed up, and she's like, oh, it was me. I wrote the email to you. I was the fan because I actually was alive, and I emailed you that suggestion on how the character could live, you know? So, you know, again, stuff like that, it's just kind of a little bit of weak reveals, especially on a movie that's so heavy on, like, making the shocking, like, whoa, that person's alive? It's like, yeah, I mean, come on. Anyways. So my other thing about all this, and then this is really where I want to get into, like, how it got a little confusing at the very, very end of this. You know, so they stopped the evil spy organization. They release the records of information that clears everyone's name. They kind of live happily ever after, question mark. You know, I mean, she did find out that her parents were not her parents. They were actually evil spies, and she was brainwashed. And, you know, her entire existence was a lie, but now she remembers her spy life. So, you know, I guess it's as happy as you could be in that situation. Anyways, some weird things happen, and I can't tell if it's supposed to be a joke or if they're being serious about this. I had to look some of this up. So, the first thing. So she's at one final book reading. She's written down the last of her books. So I guess, you know, after all this, she decides to go back to this life, which again was a fake life that the bad guys had brainwashed her into living. So I'm not sure about going back to this life, but okay, sure, why not? Go back to the life, finish that last book you were gonna write, even though this was all a lie. Anyways, so she finishes writing this last book, and in the crowd, she gets one last question, and it's Henry Cavill. Except now he's got like a mullet, and he's using a country accent, and he's like, well, I don't have any questions for you, but you might have a couple of questions for me. And she has like this shocked look on her face. And this is like the first thing that happens where I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, even if this is supposed to be a joke, like, oh, it's Henry Cavill, he was playing the imaginary character this whole movie. I don't understand why she would have questions for him. What did he mean by that, you know? Because what does he know about the events that transpired here? Because, again, he was never real, you know? He was never like an actual agent. That's just like her imaginary character that she made up was her. She was the, you know, in quotes, Agent Argylle, right? So, not really sure what this, you know, I think it was supposed to be a joke, but it ended up being more confusing than funny, because so in the moment, and this is like one of the last things that happens in the movie, it just kind of left you on a very like, wait, what? what does he mean that she'll have questions for him? Does he know something? What does he know? I don't understand. You know, if he just showed up and he was like, oh, I'm a big fan, like if that was it, that would have been like a funny kind of gag there. But the way they had him say that specific line, it doesn't, I don't know. It was confusing to me. Anyways, the second thing, we have like a, not even a mid-credit scene. This is honestly like immediately as the credits start playing. So we have, we cut to the title, says 20 years ago. And there's a pub that's called the Kingsman. So right away you're like, oh, okay, so they're doing like a crossover. Kingsman, okay. So, you know, British guy walks into a pub, this young kid, and he's like, oh, he says some secret passwords, and the bartender gives him a gun, and he's like, all right, what's your name, kid? And he's like, oh, my name is Argylle, right? So, and then it zooms out from the pub, and now it's showing the poster of her book that she was writing, and it's like, Argylle the movie coming soon. So, you know, and this is where it gets really confusing, because on the one hand, it feels like he's promoting an actual movie that's going to be made. On the other hand, you're also doing this like Kingsman crossover potentially, you know, because it was very much, you know, it was a British bar just like they have in the Kingsman movies, and you know, so like, are you implying that there is a real Agent Argylle in this world, and somehow she, you know, even though she lost her memories and then gained them back, and she was using the events that Argylle was doing was based on her missions as a spy, somehow there, on top of all that, there really is an Agent Argylle out there in the world. You know, or are you saying that the Argylle movie that we just saw like a little preview for, you know, like potentially happening, and Kingsman, by extension of that crossover there, all take place as a fictional movie inside of this movie? You know, again, I'm probably thinking way too hard about this, but like, I'm more confused than I am like, you know, I'm left going like, what is this supposed to mean? They weren't very clear, is what I'm saying. Is this a real movie that's happening, or are you just trying to make some really vague connection that the fictional Argylle spy and the Kingsman are all both fake things inside of this movie, and this movie's like the top layer of reality, and those are 2 layers down? Is that what you're saying? I don't know. It was kind of a strange move to put all that in that way. You know, like if you want to build a connection and say like all this spy stuff is happening in the same world, why not make Kingsman happen in their established real world spy stuff instead of making it happen with the fictional Argylle character? Very weird. I don't quite understand. I'm sure they're trying to make a movie out of the in-universe character of Argylle now, but again, like I said, it just raises more questions, because what does that Henry Cavill part mean? I don't get it. In any case, look, the movie is fun. You know, it's got like all the kinds of things you would expect from a Mathew Vaughn movie at this point. I do not think that this is gonna be one that a lot of people are gonna like recommend to their friends. This is definitely like oh, you'll catch this on Netflix and you might even really like it, but I think they easily could have shaved off like 10-15 minutes off the ending of this thing. Again, it just kind of feels like it ends several times. It's got a little bit of Return of the King syndrome, just a little bit. And yeah, some of those twists were like, well, yeah, no shit, you know, like, of course, they keep establishing that this character who showed up for like 5 seconds at the beginning of the movie is like, oh, well, this character might be alive. And I'm like, okay, so she's gonna be alive and save the day at the end. And sure enough, that's what happened. So yeah, I will say, you know, I still had a good time. I enjoyed watching the movie, but yeah, I think they definitely could have edited this down a little bit more. Samuel L. Jackson doesn't get much to do, you know, which is a shame, because it felt like in the trailer he was gonna like play a big part, and he's really just, he's like the guy in the chair, and then they show up there, he's, you know, he delivers like a couple of touching moments, and then he's just sitting in the chair for the rest of the movie. He doesn't like get to be part of the action at all. So, you know, it's like, they probably could have done something with his character. Also, I will say this, you know, I'm usually not much of like a, you know, CG snob kind of thing, you know, like some people are really picky about their CG and they're like, my god, this looks horrible. There is a moment where they're doing this like kind of choreographed gunfight in the middle of a hallway, and the music's blasting, and they're throwing these smoke grenades that are all multicolored smoke grenades, you know, and it looks all, you know, again, very stylistic, very Mathew Vaughn like, right? I couldn't help but notice a lot of the smoke looked it looked not just fake, but like really bad. like I don't know what it was. I don't know if like just some of the smoke never got to finish rendering, but all the different colors were happening, and then there were other times where like characters were spinning around, and they would show like the camera angle facing them, and you're seeing the room spin around behind them, and it kind of looked like a bad green screen behind them. And I don't know what was going on there, but something about the smoke looked off to me. And it was kind of distracting. And again, I'm not usually someone who like nitpicks CGI. Like I usually completely gloss over that stuff. I don't really care. But even I noticed like, oh, this smoke looks weird. This is like, it's like cartoony looking smoke. I don't know. But anyways, otherwise, I enjoyed Argylle. If you don't manage to catch it in theaters, I think once it hits Netflix or wherever it ends up, definitely watch it at least once. You know, again, I don't think this is gonna be like the Kingsman movies where we end up getting like 3 of these things. I just don't see that happening with this. But I did enjoy it, you know, like I enjoyed the main leads, Bryce Dallas Howard, Sam Rockwell, you know, they're both really good in the movie. I enjoyed their chemistry, and they kind of have like a romance going on, and you know, like I buy right into it once they establish it, you know. But yeah, otherwise I think this one just, it could have used another pass in the editing room, you know. But anyways, let me know what you guys think about Argylle and the twist, which again, it was kind of it's just a Total Recall, really, right? Like yeah, we've done this before. It's just Total Recall. Yeah. Anyways, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.